I got my Losers Club shirt on. I'm in the spirit. Hey guys, my name is Miranda and welcome to my universe. If you were to tell me 3 months ago that I was going to make this video and that I was going to read this book, I would laugh at you and say, no, there's no chance that that would ever happen in my lifetime. And yet, here we are. How did we come to this place? How am I holding this book that I read and annotated thoroughly and slaved over? How did this all happen? So It by Stephen King. If you don't know what this book is about, I really don't know if I can help you because this book I feel like is literally everywhere. So just a little background story with this book. Like I said before, I used to never think that I would ever read this book. I watched the movie, the newest one in 2016 or 2017, I think. I loved it. It was actually one of my favorite movies ever. Even though I loved the movie, I had heard so much about this book that was bad, and there's just a lot of stigma surrounding it. I told myself I would never read it, and I never wanted to, but I ended up joining a book club, and guess what the first book we had to read was? So yeah, I ended up buying a copy, deciding for myself that I was going to annotate it and make a review for you guys after I was done so I can get my thoughts out there. There's a lot in this book. Yes, it is 1,150 something pages of fear, disturbance, laughter, joy, maybe? So a basic overview of it, we follow around 2 different timelines. The first timeline is in the 1950s. We follow around 7 children who end up being terrorized by it. They live in the town of Derry, Maine, and they try to track down it, try to kill him. And then the second timeline is them, the same characters, 27 years later in the 80s when they realize that it never actually was killed and they have to tackle him again. I'm first gonna start with the cons because I enjoy ending at pros. One of the biggest issues I had with this book was the bonding scene, and if you have looked at other reviews of this book or have read the book or just seen, if you've talked to people about this book, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's a fairly popular scene because it is very disturbing and gross and very horrible. It's just really awful altogether. Obviously, I feel the same way everybody else feels. I do understand why Stephen King added it and what he was trying to get across because the scene does liberate the children and it does bring them together, but it was just so bad. I didn't like it. I have to side with everybody else on that. Another issue for me was definitely the amount of detail in this book. Now, I'm not hating on imagery and description because I love description, but this book, I think Stephen King could have easily chopped it down another 300 pages and made it much shorter because there's so much description about so many things that don't need attention. I don't need to know Mr. Stevens' aunt's name and why he hates porridge now because she burnt his porridge one time and then his cat decided that it was a good idea to puke on him. Really? The last con I had, which I think was a big one for me because the whole point of this being a horror novel is to scare the audience. And I don't know about you, but I wasn't scared. I don't know what it is about Stephen King's writing, but I read Pet Sematary first, and then I read it, and neither of the books scared me at all. Like, the movies are freaking terrifying, but this book, there were some scenes that really did scare me and I thought, wow, this is really creepy, but those scenes were very few and very far between. Maybe it's because I don't really get scared by books, which don't ask me why that's a thing because I really don't know. It was just very off-putting for me because I would get creeped out, but nothing actually truly scared me in this book. Now on to my favorite part, the prose. First of all, like I said earlier, characterization. These characters are so adorable and I love them so much. I would literally die for Richie and Eddie, okay? Don't touch my children, I swear. Stephen King, he was really able to not only change the characters and show the growth that they made from childhood to adulthood, but he also was able to keep some of their childhood aspects intact. He just did a very good job with connecting the past and the future and all of the history of Derry, in fact. That leads me to my second pro, which is the history of Derry, Maine, which is a fictional town, but Stephen King has made so much rich history for this town, and he was able to connect everything, connect the different stories, the different ways that it terrorized Derry throughout the years, how it controls Derry and controls the people who live there even when they're not thinking about it was very, like, phenomenally done. I was very, very impressed, and that was one of my favorite parts of the book. Another thing I adored about it was the symbols. I am a nerd for symbols and for metaphors and for different things that mean something than it actually says up front. The reason that it even attacks children and how that all is explained is so freaking good. Oh my gosh. If you have read this book and you haven't really looked into some of the symbols, like the turtle or what it represents in general, or the bicycle or Eddie's aspirator, you really need to think about it. Just think about it. You don't even have to look it up. Just think about it. It is so good. It gives me chills every time. The last pro that I have, oh, I just hit myself. The last pro I have for it is that the ending is amazing. The ending was so well pieced together and it was literally like a masterpiece. All of the characters started coming together. All of the stories, both of the stories kind of came together and you realized where they started to connect. There were no loose strands. Everything was tying back, and the ending, just, this book is a 4-star book because of the ending. I felt so many emotions in the last, like, 100 pages. It's not even funny. So if you read this book at any time in your life and you get like 60% of the way through and you're wondering whether you should finish or not, I say just go for it. The beginning part of the book is so hard to get through because it's all description, all introduction, but the last part is so good. The last part is my favorite part, as it usually is with most books that I read. But this book, 4 stars, 8 out of 10. I probably wouldn't read it again, and I definitely wouldn't recommend it for everybody, but if you want a train wreck of emotions, read it, please. All right, I'm basically done. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you all. Please be safe, make good choices, and I will definitely see you next time. Bye!